First one. Hello, Juan and Jai Shimataji.
Hello, Uncle Jay Mataji. Good to reconnect with you again after the tour.
And Jai Shimataji, and hello to everybody who are watching us, the few people who take their time to watch this channel, and thank you for that. We are like the name on the screen, Daniel Bostan and Juan Vega. He's from Australia. The reason we have this discussion is because I met him in Brazil tour, which finished about 3 weeks ago. A long, long tour, more than a month for me at least, because we have to travel about few days to Brazil and back, obviously. So in Brazil, I met a lot of very, very interesting people. One of the people I met there is Juan. So we've been together in the South tour, so we can share some experiences. But as you know, probably if you watch my discussion with some other fellow Sahaja Yogis, I like to know a little bit more about the person we have this discussion. And I won't lie to you. I know a little bit about Juan, but I want you, the people who are watching, to know about Juan. He's a very young fellow. He's a student. He's from Aussie, but he was born in Argentina. His father, who have the same name, Juan Vega, is from Argentina, and I plan to talk with him as well because he is one of the old Sahaja Yogis from the beginning of Sahaja Yoga, and he will have a lot of stories to tell. They moved in Australia when Juan was about 1 year old, so he's born realized, and he have experience in Sahaja Yoga Australia, but also he knows a little bit about some other, he traveled a bit. So we will talk about this. He's a student in languages, is also an actor. His passion for cinematography, we will wish him success. He have a film. He showed me some clips of his film. I was quite impressed. So we will take it from there. Enough from me now. So this is Juan Vega, which I challenge to tell us about his beginning in spirituality. Born in a Sahaj family, for him probably the spirituality was a given, was there. So Juan, my friend,
Mhm.
please tell us how the things was working with you in that perspective.
Well, first of all, Jay Mataji, everyone, and thank you for tuning into our conversation. So, yeah, both my parents, they got married in Sahaj. So yeah, I was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina. I was there for about 3 months, and then for the remaining months of the year, I went over to Bolivia and stayed with the family I have over there. And then just as I was about to turn one, that is when my parents decided that it would be ideal for us to move to Australia because beforehand my dad was already familiar with Australia. He had worked in Australia. His main profession was as a taxi driver, and he's also someone who was very close to Shrimadaji. There are many photos of them together. Like for example, there's this one big photo that he has in his bedroom where he's in Sydney Airport alongside Uncle Bruno. And some other people as well. Like it's at this point that photo, it's like sort of wearing away, as is the case with photos that last like very long.
That photo,
But
that you,
yeah,
you should bring that photo, Juan. That's the original. He keep it like that. He didn't have a negative or something.
that I don't know. I'd have to ask him personally. But in relation to me growing up in Sahaj, so yeah, I had grown up in Australia, like in the from 1997 onwards. Very, very wonderful childhood, a lot of interesting memories. Yeah, I grew up in a place like Australia, very, very developed. Whereas where I came from, obviously, it's different story of everything that was happening there at that time, without going into too much detail. Yeah, very interesting childhood that I had growing up. Yeah, I was raised uh, in meditation and everything related to Sahaja Yoga. Um, but the thing is with me, the more and more I grew up just practicing, it started getting to a point like, why am I really doing this? I mean, I would usually go to say programs and meditations mainly because I was told to. Um, but especially throughout primary school, as I was growing up, I started becoming a bit rebellious and not really taking it seriously. Like one of the most common things that used to happen was whenever my mom used to invite me and my brother to go do the meditation, I'd always be rebellious and say, no, 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 it's such a waste of time. I don't know why I do it. And even when I do it, I wouldn't actually do it seriously. I mean, normally, you're a kid, you have other interests, you like to play
Just
around.
because they told you, probably.
Yeah, but at the same time, I felt like it wasn't something that called out to me.
Mhm.
Um, but how that changed, as you mentioned before, the second realization, I would say that I had that, if you can call it that, second realization, when I went to ISPS in 2009. I was at a point in my life just as I was entering high school, but I was being very, mischievous, very rude, as is the case with teenagers. They eventually rebel. But with me, I was like sort of getting out of control and being this sort of poorly educated kid. And I had the feeling that if I remained in an Australian high school, that I was probably going to grow up in the culture that we have here, which is not very good if for someone growing up at that age. So going to ISPS, I think, was one of the smartest decisions that my parents made in uh, to send me overseas and get to know ISPS, because what would happen was, like, over the years, whenever I used to misbehave, my mom would always say to me that, if you went to Dharamshala, being how you are, you wouldn't survive. There's like many kids your age who already know how to take care of themselves. Whereas you, like, you're not taking it seriously at all. So she'd always be alluding to that over the years. Like, so the year finally came that I got to go. Um, so the reason why that was a turning point for me was, one day after my dad had left me and had headed back to Australia, that was the moment when I realized just how alone I was and how alone I was going to be for the remaining 9 months. Obviously, I was going to be in the company of Sahaja Yogis, but still, it just didn't seem like enough for me. I'm just away from home, away from my family, and that is when it hit me, and that is when I actually experienced homesickness. Got really sad knowing that I'm no longer at home. I'm a stranger in a strange land. And what's interesting is that feeling, that despair that I felt, it just came so involuntarily. Like, I didn't want to feel it, but I just couldn't help it. So the first few weeks that I had at ISPS, they were not very easy for me. I was suffering every step of the way, crying and everything, missing out on meditation, missing out on a lot of classes. But what was interesting was that in the middle of all that, and this is actually something that I've told, like, very few people, but it's very important because this for me is what helped me develop my sense of Dharma for me, was that in the middle of all that sadness that I was feeling from being separated from home and from my family, suddenly I was consumed by this remorse for all the bad things that I did before I went to ISPS, being rude to people and just like being a troublemaker. And so that is when I had the sensation like, no, 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 please, I do not want to suffer like this anymore. I actually want to be a better person. I want to be someone who's educated and courteous. So that, as painful as it was, that actually ended up changing me from the better. So that ended up making me try to be a bit more in control with the way that I tend to behave with people. So yeah, at that age, I was 13. So I went through an experience like that at that particular age. Now, the issue is that, yeah, it's important to have a sense of moral authority. But the thing is, my heart wasn't exactly in the right place just yet at that age. So at the same time, with this newfound sense of wanting to be a better person, there were elements in which I was sort of exceeding, where I was trying to be a Mr. Moral Authority kind of person for almost everything. And it was kind of becoming a bit excessive. So it was important for me to, grow, obviously, be grateful for this sense of Dharma that I had developed. But yeah, going to ISPS, I would say, is what allowed me to get a perspective of what it is like to be a good Sahaja Yogi and to meditate, because as I said, that sense of remorse is what motivated me to take seriously meditation, because that suffering made me realize the importance of safeguarding your mental health. And just by taking meditation seriously, at that point, I started noticing a lot of good things started to happen. I was no longer that really, really rebellious kid who was very much influenced by Australian culture. I just suddenly became a completely different person, because in the start of the year, I was sort of getting sucked into that world and into those sorts of influences. So going to ISPS and the things that I learned over there, and just for me, being in a country like India, what's interesting is that people always like to go about India being a country that has its problems. It's like poor, corrupt, dirty, and that sort of thing. But to me, it's a country which actually has my admiration. Even if I grew up in a country which you could say is more developed than India is, but India, I always say to people that it's one of those countries that is rich in ways that capitalism doesn't show us. The fact that it's very spiritual, they put a culturally discipline is something that they put a very high emphasis on, and we know that that's mainly because of everything that Gandhi did in the whole independence movement, and how he tried to foster a sense of discipline amongst his people if they were to truly be free from any sort of influence that would try to domesticate them the way the British did, institutionally and culturally. So going to India made me realize just how big the world truly is, not on paper, but actually seen for myself. So that is what also allowed me to be a very tolerant person. Like us as Sahaja Yogis, whenever we meet other Sahaja Yogis from around the world, we don't, because we all know the same thing in relation to what Shrimataji has taught us. It's just, we don't feel the need to jump into the same old games of discrimination and thinking that just because someone is different in that regard, that somehow makes them lesser people than we are. But just by being in India itself and in the Himalayas of all places, just the serenity that being in a place like that has, I would say that is what changed me for the better and allowed me to develop the sense of dharma for myself. And it was no longer a case of me simply just practicing Sahaja Yoga simply because my parents always pushed me to do it, or they raised me to do it. And I think this is where the issue comes in about a lot of people that are born realized who don't who eventually decide that they no longer want to practice it. Like, for me, I never thought of it as something that we should judge them for, because the way that I see it is that the people from my parents' generation, who started out in Sahaja Yoga, the truth is, like, no one forced them to embrace Sahaja Yoga. There were a group of people that were seeking like some spiritual getaway, knowing that perhaps religion or other things that they came across didn't exactly work for them. So they found it because it was something that they were really wanting to find. So I think when it comes to people who are born realized that for a time decide that they no longer want to continue practicing it, I'd say like we shouldn't push them, because they're growing up and they're developing a sense of who they want to be and what are things that call out to them. Because this is the reason why Shrimataji always talks about the desire to want to feel the vibrations and to go into thoughtless awareness. Because if you don't have the desire to feel what you feel when you go into thoughtless awareness, then you're not exactly going to reap the benefits from it. So one thing is actually doing the meditation, but doing it with intention. I think that applies to anything that a person decides to pursue. If the intent is not there, then it's just what's going to happen is they'll do it, but chances are like don't expect them to actually reap the benefits that it's intended.
Yeah, just to complete you, in my experience, in my observation around with because the topic it's about the children who are born in Sahaj families. There is no a recipe. There is not a perfect way to make them to stay in Sahaja Yoga. So on one hand, you are right. You don't have to push them. But the fact that some parents push them do not result necessarily in the fact that they are feeling pressed or pushed, and that's the reason for them to reject Sahaja Yoga. No matter what, in the end, is just that click inside of everybody who it's happened or not. I cannot say the reason for the some of the young people rejecting Sahaja Yoga is because their parents pushed them. Uh, Maybe that's just one part of the equation, but the problem is inside of the person, of the kids. So he have his own way. Shimataji told us very clear. They have their own way. Shimataji told us, are not your children? Yes, are not your children. Obviously, we cannot digest that 100%. We know because Shimataji told us, but as a parents, you do not embrace it fully. That statement, are not your children. Leave it to me. Obviously, we cannot cut all the link with our children. So some of the parents have their own way of dealing with the kids regarding Sahaja Yoga. Some of them push them, some of them not push them. There is not recipe. In the end, the kids is the one who decided. He's something inside him. So probably in your case, I mean not probably, definitely in your case, that's happened, and the trigger was Dharamsala. So, speaking about other kids, I do not dare to do, including my kids. So, God knows in the end. By the way, how long you stay in Dharamsala?
I was there for 5 years, so between 2009 and 2013.
Okay, so you stay a little bit.
So pretty
Okay.
much all of like what would be my high school life. So yeah, like all those years being protected from like say the high school culture in like I'd say like if I probably went to an Australian high school instead of ISPS, I probably would be a you know different. Like I probably wouldn't know the things that I know now about say Sahaj and about Dharma. I wouldn't have experienced the things that I experienced that motivated me to be everything that I am today when it comes to the way that I see Sahaja Yoga, the way that I look on meditation in general.
And something else, another little things I want to add. Not going to Dharamshala is also not a perfect recipe for kids to become Sahaja Yogi,
Of
because
course.
unfortunately, personally, I know a lot of cases of kids. Honestly, I know more kids, but that's just me. I know more kids who give up Sahaja Yoga after they've been to Sahaja Yoga, including from Australia, including from people I know very well, because they told me I have no way to find this kind of stuff just from the parents or from the kids when they grow a little bit. I know people. It's a very sad story. I know a guy from. It doesn't matter because I don't want. Who told me he's a young one who also been to Dharamsala, and he told me no one, but no one from his class in Dharamsala. I don't know how many years stayed there. Actually, I know this information from Delia, who have more contact with that person. Told me no one, no any kids from his class is still in Sahaja Yoga, only himself. And they are also from all over the world. I don't know how many, but again, um, we have to
Yeah,
talk
you're
about
right.
this.
There isn't a singular cause as to why people like they grow up in Sahaj eventually decide to yeah, of course, yeah, definitely. Because as the saying goes, different things to different people. So it depends on the circumstances, the aspirations that they have in life, and maybe it is because maybe they sort of see Sahaj as more of an obligation rather than an experience in which that they grow. So
Yes,
and they
Juan,
end up
I
because they
agree with you.
yeah.
I fully agree
Yeah.
with you, but that just a part. And
Yeah.
I dare to believe that the part you are talking about is just the cosmetic one, it's just the outside one. For me, if I dare to tell my opinion about the subject, is about the click inside, or the um, um, availability. You know, there are 16 steps of the spirituality. To come to Sahaja Yoga, you need to be 12. 16 being the last one, God, no one reach it. 15 also, very, you have to be a saint. To reach Sahaja Yoga, you can imagine there are another 12 steps in our previous lives, which are not spiritual, but help you to become interested in the real spirituality, in Sahaja Yoga. And you have to reach that stage. No matter what, if you are not the 12th stage, you do not do Sahaja Yoga. And unfortunately, some of the kids which we call it realized, because are born from us, from realized persons, are not. Probably. That's my interpretation. It's one of the everybody's free to play with this topic. So anyway, I'm very happy that we talk about that, and you put your soul on the plate, talking about your teenage experiences and life as a rebellious. Please continue, Juan.
Yeah. So yeah, and obviously, and also the one thing I will say that I did go through at ISPS, and this is also something that or another thing which I told very few people about, but I really do love sharing it because it was another sort of big phase in my life. Over the years, what would happen is in the middle of being a teenager, like sure, I wasn't that erratic kid when I first went to ISPS, but there was still the element in which I was sort of getting distracted and not very dedicated when it comes to studies, and that sort of thing is not an option in a country like India where the standard is high when it comes to things like science and maths. And I unfortunately was becoming the kind of kid that's easily distracted and not taking it seriously. But when I got to the end of like class 10, getting bad marks and eventually having to do the board exam, that I had this moment in preparation for that exam where suddenly I realized like just how undedicated I was, and seeing the consequences that it's having in preparation for an important exam like the board exam. And that is when I reflected on just the lack of dedication that I had. Was like, no, it's no laughing matter. Like at the time, it felt like a fun thing, not taking it seriously, because the attitude at that age is generally like, oh, studies, it's an obligation. Why? Because at that time, you don't exactly know what you aspire to become professionally. But I had this sort of, I don't know if I can call it an epiphany, but I had this moment where I just got so depressed and I started beating myself up and saying, like, why were you undedicated? Why didn't you attend that class? Why didn't you do that homework? We're at a critical point, and because of all that lack of dedication, you were probably going to land yourself in a very serious problem. And that is when I suddenly had this perception that, for life, in order to make it, you have to be strong, psychologically. And as I said, I was beating myself up. I considered myself as not that. So in the little time that I had, I did put, say the 11th hour effort into studying as much as I can. And the good news is that I was able to just pass. But that's when I realized, hey, the problem is that I don't exactly seem to have a passion for anything. Everyone else in my class more or less has an idea of what they want to study at university. Me, not really. And so and when you choose the subjects you study in year 11 and 12, is because of university careers. And so I felt like I was choosing particular subjects, just for the sake of doing so, but not knowing what I wanted to do. And that, as a way of trying to maybe discipline myself, I said to myself, okay, look, I survived the board exams, even though I had a sort of painful epiphany where I beat myself up. I thought, okay, you know what? If within the next year or so, I don't figure out who exactly I want to be, professionally by the time I graduate, then that's it. I'm going to go straight to military school, because that was the point when I realized, yeah, discipline is not something that's just force fed on you by old people, just people that are older than you, just so they can make you like them. No, you end up realizing why discipline is actually an important thing for anyone growing up if they want to have a sense of direction for any circumstance. So I thought, okay, you know what? It turns out that I haven't had the sort of upbringing, educationally speaking, that has really taught me the importance of discipline. I thought, you know what? Maybe the only thing that will is possibly going to military school. Luckily, that didn't happen because by the time I got back to Australia, I discovered actually that I wanted to do performance related things. And just to touch briefly on why I decided to take that as a career was because over the years I used to take part in little performances here and there, skits. I used to really enjoy taking part in public speaking competitions. I used to host a lot of events at ISPS, but at the time I didn't realize just how much I enjoyed doing those things. And so I realized that no, the problem is that I wasn't actually looking hard enough. So that's when I realized, yeah, performance is something that I would like to do because in that sense, it calls out to me because I really do enjoy it and it's fun. So that's when I decided, yeah, that is what I think was my calling all along. So no more going too hard on myself, saying that nah, it's either I figure it out now or I go to military school because even by the time people graduate from high school, they even at that age, there are people who don't know exactly what they want to do. So maybe in that regard, I was going a little too harsh on myself. Maybe it was important that I do give myself a talking to when I realized how undedicated I was and that needed to change. But because growing up, I was also someone who used to take things very seriously. So that must have been the very thing that made me adopt that, extremist position of going way too hard on myself. And so yeah, it's like I said, just another example of how like all those years that I was at ISPS, it really I learned things that I probably wouldn't have learned, simply just being at home. Like being at home, I wouldn't have experienced the things that gave me a perspective about what it is to have a sense of dharma, what is the importance of discipline, and why like education, knowledge is something that can guide you and take you to open so many doors for you. So yeah, that was a stage when I realized things which I wished I had known at the time when I wasn't very dedicated.
You come back in Aussie in 2013.
Well, 2013 was my last year, but
Your
yeah,
last year, you've been probably 18, 19 years old.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
I had to repeat year 11 as well.
In
Australia, yeah.
in Australia, um, what are your memories from that period, which is not very long ago, about Sahaja
Mhm.
Yoga in Australia? You've been obviously in the collectivity of um, you are
Sydney.
uh, yeah, Sydney. So we know that now in Australia the things are going. Not sure if we will talk about that, but what was the atmosphere when you come back in Australia from India? How you find Sahaja Yoga in Australia in the collectivity there?
Oh,
So
it's always yeah, I
not
always
long
found that
ago. So just
yeah, no,
6 years ago,
like
nine,
six years
seven.
yeah.
Yeah, six,
Yeah, I
7
mean, like when I came back from ISPS, which was like say the 2013 2014, it was yeah, it was still very active. You had a lot of like very engaging sort of events happening. In fact, that year I had the pleasure of taking part of a UVA seminar up in Brisbane, and that for me was the second time I got to go to Brisbane. I got to see Wamaran, amazing place. The first time I went there, I was like 8 years old. Yeah, it was. I really liked how we still had like those sorts of camps, those activities, like seminars that we have. Like for example, the Easter seminar, international seminars where people from around the world come. Like that was like very much in full throttle, and I was actually very like I really enjoyed it very much because it was after having gone through ISPS and now being a UVA, no longer that little kid who simply just went there because my parents took me to the program. No, I was actually it was a time where I felt like actually participating in all those events that they would have. So yeah, so the way to describe it, I'd say very active. I would say very active.
Yeah. Do you have the chance to go in some places outside Australia?
Yeah, in 2019, I went to Spain for almost 2 years. because I was studying Spanish as a minor at university as part of my language degree. And so I got to take part in this program where I got to work as an English assistant in a Spanish high school. But if it wasn't for the help of the Sahaja Yogis in Madrid, I probably would have struggled in finding accommodation. So the help that they gave me is just so invaluable. Like I'm always going to be so grateful for them, for everything that they did in helping me in that regard, because that was something which I thought was going to be an issue. And because I already knew some of them beforehand, like some of them went to ISPS and I got to know them there. So it was actually a good opportunity for me to reconnect with them in Spain. So I was working as an English assistant in a high school where I basically help out the English teachers in a bilingual school, helping the students practice their English, help them work on any projects that they're working on. And the whole purpose of that program was just to help take a lot of load off the teachers, because depending on the level that students have, the kids over there tend to treat English as a subject not to be taken so seriously. I did that during the day, and in the nighttime, I would continue with my acting training in Spanish as an opportunity for me to improve my Spanish. And every weekend, I would go over to the ashram that they have over in the city, share experiences with them. And it was, yeah, I got to meet some really interesting people while I was there before COVID struck. So I was there in the middle of the pandemic and right when they started vaccinating people. It was an interesting time to have chosen to go to Spain, because I was also there at the start of 2021 where it snowed for the first time in Madrid, in the first time in 50 years that happened. But also
Just a question.
before COVID, yeah.
Just a question about the Spanish. Have you have the chance to learn Spanish at home?
Yeah, I grew up speaking Spanish
Okay.
in Australia, but when I went to Spain, still, like just because I grew up speaking it at home, growing up in a country like Australia, it still resulted in a lot of like limitations in the way that I spoke. Like when I got there, people loved listening to the sort of accent that I had, the sort of mix between gringo, Latino. It was interesting. I don't have it anymore, thanks to how I was able to improve. Because in fact now in Brazil that I met up with a lot of Sahaja Yogis from South America, they each and every one of them will tell me that sure, I pronounce the words the way as a Latin American would in Spanish, but the intonation that I have has more of a Spanish twang to it. So it was interesting. You can tell that the time that I spent over in Spain really paid off in improving my Spanish. But to your question about other countries that I went to, I also had the pleasure of going to Italy for the first time in December of 2019. Got to meet some of my extended family that have been living there for years, and I also got to take part in a Yuva seminar that they had over in Rome ashram. Again, got to meet up with some people that I had seen at ISPS, but also got to meet some fresh new faces as well. And in particular, I was finally able to meet up with someone from my extended family, Nalini, who lives here in Australia now. She's married to Pranav Ral, who is one of the smartest people that I've ever met. Like without going into too much detail, Pranav is a guy that was something of a mentor for me, and someone who was one of those people at ISPS, which was, as I said, was a mentor for me at a time when no one really was interested in trying to talk sense into me, at a time when I was like at that phase of not taking things seriously. When I found out that Nalini was matched with him, I said, no, you are very much in good hands. He's an amazing guy. All the best to the both of you. So I got to meet her for the first time. Anita Valderrama, who is my older cousin. Like I finally got to meet her last year for the first time at the wedding. So yeah, going to Europe, those experiences, whether it was in Spain or whether it was in Italy before everything went bad because of the pandemic, it was wonderful. Like again, thrusting myself in a Sahaj sort of context, and experiencing Sahaj things, very auspicious things that you didn't exactly expect would happen, but they unfold in a way that just exceeds your expectations, where you're like wow, like almost in a way that you feel like a lot of things that maybe I didn't deserve occurred, but it's just experiences that you just don't anticipate are going to happen, and just how it's refreshing, really. And I'd say taking part in the tour in Brazil is no exception. It was the first time in 5 years that I was able to travel ever since I got back from Spain. having to take care of myself and adapt to the circumstances in a pandemic context. And let me say, getting home wasn't easy with all the restrictions that were in place everywhere. How costly flights were, but I was able to manage, by putting my faith in Shri and in the meditation that I practice, that I know that I'm in good hands, and that at the same time it's important for me to be aware, but at the same time avoid overthinking so as to not affect myself at a subtle level.
How the things are now in Sydney, in Australia? Tell me your opinion, whatever you want to touch. I know it's a sensitive subject. I know I don't push it. I just tell me what you can, whatever you feel.
Well,
Like,
what I will say is that I haven't actually been attending the programs like that they have, like, per se. Like, I still practice meditation at home with my mom. In fact, my mom is someone who hasn't really been attending the ashrams lately either. But we still like have pujas when the time comes. Yeah, I will say that it does feel different. Like, as you asked me before, what I felt everything felt like in terms of Sahaj when I got back. It's safe to say that it's definitely different to what it was then. It's no, I just,
you
because
can
if you
feel
think
the
about it,
you can feel the tension, or what is the difference?
well, I mean, put it like this. You remember how after 2011, when Shumarji passed away, and the effect that it had on the collectives, like, overall, like, it felt very gloomy, and obviously, like, it felt sad and everything. It did, at the time, everything just felt so confusing. So the way that I see it is, it again feels like confusing, like, in its own way. I do believe that it's probably just another Maya that we're being subjected to sort of like test the limits of, like, it's how much we believe in what it is that we're doing. And in order to separate the way in which us as Sahaja Yogis tend to deal with anything, but from a spiritual perspective, like, not from a mundane perspective. Because, look, the thing is, what I'm always guided by the simple things that Shrimataji has said in her speeches. Like, for example, that there shouldn't be any competition amongst Sahaja Yogis other than competition as to who is more compassionate than the other. The analogy of the king that wanted his chicken to fight the others, but the sage made it such that he doesn't, and the message that has, and ultimately how, even after we have our realization, it doesn't automatically make us infallible. We're at the mercy of Sri Ekadesha Rudra. So, no, like, I don't look at it as something which warrants me adopting the mentality that, oh, you must go against this person, you must go against that person. Like, I just think, when it comes to situations like this, I think it's very easy for it to spiral into a sort of like personality contest. The way that the average politician does, like, everywhere in politics, we know what's their way of doing things. So, yeah, it's like, he said this, he said that, he did that. No, look, simply, I don't, personally, I do not see it as I don't have, like, sort of warrior spirit in relation to this sort of thing. Like, again, yeah, we're being tested. Like, I know what it's like to be tested, like, all those years when I was at ISPS, and the things that came my way and that taught me the lessons that they taught me. Look, at the end of the day, as long as people are focused on growing up spiritually, keeping their subtle system intact, like, so long as, like, people do that, then whatever problem comes their way, or whatever issue comes, like, they're able to deal with it in a way that they have a clear conscience. It's all through subtle means, not looking at from on the surface, but deep down on the inside, and just But yeah, but overall, to answer your question, it's yeah, I simply just look at it like that. I don't see it as like an existential crisis, really, that we're going through, and suddenly, because of that, we got to get up in arms. Like, no, I don't think that there's any circumstance where us as Sahaja Yogis have to suddenly think like average world leaders, like the way that they tend to deal with any sort of like conflict that arises. So, and that to me, luckily, like it hasn't been enough to scare me away and suddenly think that, oh, the what's the point? What's the point in me practicing Sahaja Yoga if it is come down to this? And in fact, the everything that I experienced in the tour and in Brazil, it was a good opportunity for me to remember that, and it just made me realize that it's not as serious as one would make it out to be. That, oh, we're at a tipping point and things are going to go really really bad. Like, no, it's again just it's I'd say it's just another test really.
Yeah, I get it. And unfortunately, I cannot be fully with you on the fact that you cannot see it as a existential crisis. But again, that's not the subject of our discussion. I obviously do not live in Australia, but I get a lot of information from there. In a way, I'm a little bit like in a Mahabharata, having friends in both camps. So I know conflicted information from them. Speaking about the collectivity, except the first 7 years when I live in Romania, very strong connected with the collectivity. After that, I have a different part of my life preparing for immigration. And after I immigrate in New Zealand, I live only 1 year in the collective of New Zealand in Auckland. After, for all other period in my life, nearly 36 years, we live more or less remotely. So we have to improvise. We have just ourselves, Delia and I, and the kids for when they were until teenager. So we have to live with that. Uh, yes, we find thanks to Wuhan plague, we have to find online groups and meditate together. Delia, for example, now it's with African meditation. I should be myself, but I'm with you now, but not a problem. Um, so we find always a way to do that. And I want to touch a little bit of other subjects. Shimataji's departing from us.
Mhm.
Uh, Not being close to Shimataji helped me and few other people I talk with, not being so attached of her human nature, which
Mhm.
in a way was good.
Mhm.
So my approach can be labeled unsensitive or whatever. Honestly, I didn't feel gloomy or very, very bad when Shimataji leave us because I
Mhm.
always see her as as God. So God cannot die. She
Mhm.
just departed. She's not just with us. So that's another little observation. So the people who are suffering about the fact that Shimataji is not with us, I believe are very, very attached of her human nature, and that's not the best way to have a relation with Shimataji. So.
Mhm.
I don't know. I ask leaders who managed to stay in Sahaja Yoga for so many years how they cope with the presence of Shimataji because those guys are close to have been close to Shimataji for a long time, and not
Mhm.
all of them managed to survive. So I asked the one who survived how they do it, and
Yeah.
one of the answer was we always regard Shimataji as the guru with the full attention on her divine aspect, especially as a guru, not necessarily as a mother, because as a mother, you have the tendency to behave like a child and do a lot of stupid things. But yeah, just
Well, I wanted to share with you a funny, like an interesting anecdote in relation to
yes, please.
I mean, as you mentioned, like you said, they didn't feel gloomy, like for you. I mean, what I will say, like I think I was that's the year when I was turning 15. Like even when I felt when I found out that Shimadaji had passed away, and the news like broke out like wildfire, despite like how I was at that point where I discovered my place in Sahaja Yoga and what sort of person, sort of yogi I wanted to be. Like, sure, even with me, like, sure, like my immediate sensation wasn't to burst out crying in the news of Shimaji's passing, not because I didn't have empathy or I didn't have a sense of like solidarity. But I was confused. I was like, I mean, yeah, Shimaji's passed away, but why is it that I don't feel sad? Like, I want to, because I don't want to come across as someone not having compassion. But I think it goes to a point like that Shimaji, she's God, and as the email said, that she went into her nirvikara form.
Yes.
But without mentioning names, there was this one, like one of my friends, family friends. She was one of those people who was very stricken by Shimadaji's passing. That her son actually went up to her and said, try to calm her, tell her that we shouldn't give in to the darkness. And yeah, she was actually quite moved that a child would tell her that. So then a few days after that, she said to me, yeah, you know what? Like Shimadaji didn't really like pass away. She's actually everywhere, even in the air. And then in response, the son he gets like so enthusiastic. He's like, even in the air? And then he just like gets for fun. He starts like, breathing in exactly like like that, to express his enthusiasm. It was like such a funny story, like in the wake of the news of like Shimadaji's passing. Like on the one hand, there were going to be those who are, just it was quiet, I would say, that, like we were at the ashram that night. It wasn't the usual program where we sing bhajan so much as it was like, it was like in the average funeral fashion. Like there's no reason for you to be up in arms. People say very little. But yeah, I just wanted to share that little like sort of anecdote of as a way of saying, innocence lives on. Even if Shimadaji passed away, it doesn't mean it's suddenly we got to surrender and give up hope of anything. It was just it's just one of those anecdote that I really really wanted to share. Like even thinking about it today, it's just it's so beautiful, really. Like,
yes, that's true. Juan, my intention is to talk about two more subjects. One
sure.
is your interest in film and cinematography and acting, and another subject is our trip in Brazil. I have the impression that it's good to leave it for another episode to talk about that, because I don't want to be tired. How you feel about having at least another episode sometime?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. Like maybe no, not this time next week. Like lucky that today, like we were able to have it at this hour. Maybe like next Wednesday we could have it like a little earlier. Would you say like
Yes.
like, if you're down for it, like say it will be 11 o'clock over in New Zealand,
No,
then maybe
next week I can do it even in the morning if you want.
in the morning.
Like we wanted today, but I cannot do it today morning. But
Yeah,
anyway,
I'll have to.
we talk about.
I'll message you about it later on. Yeah.
Yes, just as a preview for our viewers, I have to tell you
Yeah.
that if you follow the channel, you will see that I upload a lot of video from the tour and from the seminar. And I have to tell you that I used to joke with Juan, and sometimes I call it Juanito just because his father is Juan as well. So he's little John, little Juan. He helped me a lot joking, I call him my assistant, but obviously sometimes he's do a lot of job better than me. And some of the filming you won't see yet are by the end of the tour in the seminar, because the program was very late and I couldn't stay that late, because otherwise next day I won't be able to function properly. I asked him to stay, so he basically do the filming, which you will see from the seminar. With that information, which we will start with that information, we will start next week. Your passion for filming, your interest in cinematography, your film, you already have it, which I understand will be presented in a competition. It's an
Yeah,
it's an
it's
Indian.
doing around in festivals. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
want.
and just as I mentioned, it's a movie that I'd say it's the first feature film that I was able to act in, and just for the viewers to know, it has I'd say that it has what could be described as a Sahaj scene where our characters are sitting in front of an altar of Shri Durga, and two ladies at the front singing the first verse and the chorus of Aigiri Nandini, while at
Don't
the
tell us.
back.
Don't tell us now.
But
Leave it
but
for.
but yeah,
Leave
it's
it. Leave it just.
but what I will yeah, but what I wanted to say is that yeah, like as soon as I found out that the director decided to insert that into the movie, I just thought to myself, I'm already experienced in this field. So yeah,
Yes, yeah, that's a hook for our viewers for next week. So for
yeah,
the moment, Juanito, thank you very much for everything you told us, for putting your soul on the plate. We really appreciate that. Thank you again, and thank you
yeah. Thank you.
for our viewers to watching us. Until next time, Jai Shri Mataji.
Jai Shri Mataji, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Uncle.